If I can walk to a location, standing up and walking to a location in Michigan on public land, I don't care how much sign there, I won't hunt it. If I don't think his hunting skill set is good enough to kill mature bucks, I will just look at him as a deer deflector. What I try to do is something that most hunters don't do. Anytime you're in big timber, your odds on a short-term hunt are we don't touch our bows other than practicing in the yard for 2 days. When I've went out of state, I've never, ever had a spot where I would go into a spot, prepare a location, and then go in and have that.
Welcome to Deer IQ, here to help you hunt smarter, elevate your approach, and consistently tag exceptional whitetail. Whether you're just starting out or a longtime hunter targeting mature bucks, this is your edge. We bring you proven tactics, expert insights, and unfiltered conversations with high-level hunters who just get it done. Guiding you through it all is veteran hunter and strategist Adam Lewis, helping you spot what others miss, fine-tune your focus, and unlock your full hunting potential. So let's raise your deer IQ. Here's your host, Adam Lewis.
Hey, I'm Adam, and in this episode of the Deer IQ podcast, we continue in our series on public land hunting details that make the difference. We look at finding deer utopias on public land. This is part 2 with my guest John Eberhart, straight from my visit with him at his mid-Michigan home recently. I suggest watching part 1 that goes with this on saddle hunting, which I'll link below. You can watch that there. If you have a hard time dealing with other hunters on public land, finding the truly out-of-the-way places you can find and hunt mature bucks successfully year after year, this is a must-watch episode. And this episode is brought to you by our industry-only hunter skills assessment, the Deer IQ Test 360, now with a free subscription of OnX Hunt. If you struggle to be consistent on the top deer in your area, there's a reason. You probably don't know your blind spots and weaknesses causing you to fall short. The solution, our unique assessment to find the holes in your approach, fix them fast, and give you a clear plan moving forward to be consistent and successful. Find out your Deer IQ now with the Deer IQ Test 360, and check out the Plus version that has a 40-minute high-value consultation. Both of those are linked below. Check them out. Okay, and now let's get to this high IQ podcast on the fine details of finding deer utopias on public land with John Eberhart. All right, well, I'm back here with John Eberhart for part 2 of our segment here. If you didn't listen to part 1, check it out. We talked about mobile hunting, his setups, why he does things a certain way. The quiz question from John was in that segment, so you check that out. Part 2 here, we're talking about public land a little more specifically, and we kind of started getting into this in the last episode with public land hunting, but we want to dial in, I guess, on public land hunting because it's just such a big deal now. So many people can't find private, have to go to public, or they want to try public because it's challenging and all that, right? So a lot of reasons, but let's start here. Let's start with this question. John, how do you find like the spot on public land? Not, the general area, but like this is the exact tree, or how do you dial that in consistently? Because you've been very successful, year after year after year.
Well, the first thing on public land I do in Michigan, and I hunt public land in Michigan differently than I hunt public land in any other state, because typically if I'm going out of state, I'm going to a lighter pressured state.
Well, yeah, we can get into that too. Like what's the difference?
But so when I'm hunting in Michigan, I'm looking for heavy security cover. I'm also looking for locations other hunters are not willing to go. So it's very rare on public land in Michigan that I'm not using a pair of either hip boots, waders, a canoe. Used to use a boat. I don't use a boat anymore. But I'm crossing deep creeks, rivers, going to accessing places where other hunters typically are not willing to go, or they just don't take the gear to go to those places. So that's where the mature bucks are pushed to during preseason scouting and location preparation by all the hunters in the area, and by throughout the season. The bigger bucks are pushed back to these remote locations where there's where they bed, and there's usually adequate security cover and stuff like that. So that's the first thing I do. I always feel like If I can walk to a location in a standing up and walking to a location in Michigan on public land, I don't care how much sign there, I won't hunt it because somebody else will have found it also.
Yeah, and it's almost like, I think of it like this, as like a self-check. Like if your brain is telling you, oh, this is too hard, then it's telling everybody else, everybody else's brain is telling them it's too hard too. And so that's probably the indication that, oh, maybe this is a good sign, right? Like
absolutely. Yes. Anything that's hard is good.
Yeah. How many times, like, let's say you get to a spot like that you put all this effort in, let's say you're scouting, right?
Yep.
And you get there and you see some hunter sign. Like, is that an immediate no, or is that a like, well, I'll have to see type thing? Was this from last year? Was this from 2 years ago? Because I've found that hunters a lot of times, either they're real habitual and like go to the same spot over and over again, or they'll hunt one spot and then never come back type thing. So
because it was too hard to access.
Yeah, or they just didn't see anything or whatever, and they just abandoned it, right? Yeah. Are you reading, like, how do you read that as well?
I always read other hunters' sign, and it's the hunting public back during COVID. They put so much popularity into hunting public land, and they still are. They're doing a great job. So a lot of really avid hunters are doing the extra work to go back to these remote areas, islands in cattail marshes, islands in a swamp, stuff like that, or dry humps in swamps and stuff. And a lot of times when I cross rivers and creeks and stuff like that, or use a canoe to go down a river and then get out, I won't say a lot of times, but occasionally I will see another hunter's either a stand in a tree, because not that many hunters hunt out of a saddle, stand in a tree, or places where trees are cut, where they made shooting lanes. And typically when you get back into those remote locations, if I do find other hunter locations, they've definitely prepared shooting lanes. Even though you're not supposed to cut stuff, they know nobody's going to come back there and check them, so they cut shooting lanes, and I do the same thing. But no, I try to avoid it if it looks like it's being hunted on a regular basis. And keep in mind, in Michigan, we have got so much public land and sections of public land. So, and a lot of times when you get back into these swamps, they're pretty big. So I will also look at the hunter location, because a lot of hunters, I view most hunter locations as deer deflectors, to be perfectly honest with you. That's the way I view a lot of it. So I'll look at the location, see if it's a good location, see how high the stand is, see how well his shooting lanes are prepared, and I will judge his hunting skill set on that. And if I don't think his hunting skill set is good enough to kill mature bucks, I will just look at him as a deer deflector, and I'll just try to hunt around him, maybe at least minimum of 100 yards or so. Okay. Because if he's a deer deflector, the deer know he's there too. Right. Okay. So they're just going to avoid his location. And usually when you cross into these areas, it's not like it's a 50-yard area. It may be 200 yards, or 200 acres of bedding area, swamp, low ground, whatever. So a lot of times you'll cross a river and you'll walk through some heavy brush along the edge of the security cover, along the edge of the waterway. And you'll open up into oaks, and once in a while you'll find a lost apple tree, because a lot of that stuff used to be pasture for cows and stuff. And it's just like a deer utopia back there. And those deer, you got to keep in mind, during the rut phases, typically when I'm back in those places on public land, it's during the rut phases. So those bucks move around in those areas during the rut phases. When they're with does, they're pushing does, they're breeding does for, they'll breed a doe, they'll bed down, he'll bed down 10 or 15 yards downwind of her, and then 20, 30 minutes later, he'll get up and walk over, and she'll run 40, 50 yards, and he'll breed her again. He may breed her 10 or 15 times during the course of the day, and they're moving around in that bedding area every time, because she always will move someplace, run someplace, and they'll do a little chase thing, and then he'll breed her. And also bucks that are in there, there's does are bedding in there as well. So there's bucks in there searching for does. So that you get a lot of daytime movements in those areas, because it's got the adequate security cover, and you've lost most of your competition. That's where they push those deer. And then during the rut phases, the bucks are actually moving somewhat during daylight hours.
Right. So you get back in a spot like that, let's say you don't see other hunter sign that's at least recent or whatever.
Yeah.
how do you find like the exact tree, let's say, you're going to get in? Like what tells you that?
Well, the cool thing about postseason scouting in the spring is I can walk every inch of the area and scrutinize everything. So I will look for where the most sign is. Okay, a lot of times you'll find openings if it's a bedding area and there's red brush and autumn olives and stuff. You'll find little openings, and a lot of times in those openings, because it's easier to transition through, deer will have runways converging through these open areas because they're already back in the security cover, and these openings are surrounded by perimeter security cover.
Yep.
So I'm looking for sign. I'm just looking for possibly, and you don't really see much of this, but once in a while you'll find a scrape area in a physical bedding area. Usually they're on the perimeters, typically, or at food sources where there's a lot of doe activity. But I'm looking for buck rubs. I'm looking for runways that are converging. I'm looking for the most convergence of sign. And hopefully that's another cool thing about a saddle. Most trees will accept a saddle. I can hunt crooked trees, leaning trees, crotches. I can hunt a lot of stuff that you can't put stands in. So it's pretty rare when I can't find a tree that will accept my saddle. But I'm just looking for, just like I would look if I was looking on a piece of private ground. I'm still always looking for security cover around the kill zone, even once I'm back across into a remote area, and I'm looking for possibly food sources. Possibly there's an oak in there that's going to be dropping food in the fall, and that's where does are going to feed. So that's a good location because the bucks are going to move there during daylight hours because they're in the secure area.
So you're looking for, it's an odds game, right? Like how many of these scouting signs can I stack together in one spot and hunt it, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's only one trail, okay, that's one. But if you got two converging, that's potentially twice as much.
I never hunt single runways.
Right.
Ever.
So the more of those you can stack together, that's just upping your odds that you could
absolutely
have a deer through there.
And I may very well in a bedding area waypoint mark 5 locations. I may go up the tree because usually I'll take my stuff here.
Yep.
And I'll go up a tree and make sure how it's going to feel when I come back in the fall to hunt it. So, I will actually get up several trees to make sure it's right. That way I know what I have to bring in the fall, or I'll make a trip back after I waypoint mark 3 or 5 trees. I'll come back still during postseason with my gear, climb the trees and make sure everything's cool, maybe clean some shooting lanes out.
Yeah. Because if you don't do that, and that's a detail that you might get away with, but it can come back to bite you. If you've never been up that tree.
Big time.
And you go in there, let's say in the morning or something, or I guess it doesn't matter, and you're thinking you could get up there, and then you get, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
So knowing exactly, okay, I'm going to put the platform or ring of steps here. I'm going to hook in right here. I have these shots. You can see it and
Yes,
And in some spots I've done this, I'll be and you can put notes, right? You can write them down. You can put them in your phone in Onyx or whatever app you use. I only need 3 sticks at this location.
Right.
I need this or that or whatever it is.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I always make notes about what I need to get in this particular tree.
Yeah. And is some of it too experienced? So if you have 4 or 5 trees at this spot that could work,
in
pick
a
one
100-acre area, you might have 4 or 5 trees.
Is some of that hunting it too, and you boil it down to actually it's these 2 trees or whatever that might be, just by experience type thing?
Well, let's say I prep. Let's say I waypoint mark 4 trees. 2 of them are food-based trees. Okay, let's say they're oaks, and the other 2 are just where there's convergences of runways, in the area. When I go in, I will check. It's going to be during season. It's the first time I'm going to go in since I've scouted this place.
Yeah.
I'm going to probably check the food-based spots first to see if they're bearing food, and if they are bearing food, is it still dropping? Okay, and then there's going to be, if they are, obviously there's going to be doe traffic because does bed. This buck bedding area thing always cracks me up, because if you're in a big bedding area, there's does bed in it just as well as bucks. So does are going to be feeding there. So that's going to be a very high traffic area for does, and it's going to be a place bucks in the bedding area are going to check for doe activity, when they get up and move. And then if those food locations don't have food and they don't have any sign, I'll move to the other spots where it was converging runways, because they're going to be there year after year after year.
Right. So season specific, and we kind of, or phase of the season specific, I guess, and current sign specific.
Yeah.
As we talked in the last podcast, we kind of got into that a little bit.
Seasonal timing, yeah.
Yep, seasonal timing. So the situation you're just talking about, basically you're going into thick security cover, you crossed some body of water, let's say a river or big
And a lot of times you're just
or
crossing with hip boots through a marsh that may have, knee-high deep water that's above regular knee boots.
Yeah,
So it may not be crossing a river, maybe just walking through a swamp for a couple hundred yards.
Some barrier, that's other people don't want to do, cross, whatever. You don't see other hunter sign, you see that. These ones you just described, and we'll move on here, but would those be more like rut phase locations, or
those are
either?
Always rut phase locations.
Yeah.
I never hunt interiors bedding areas during any time other than the rut phase.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that from
Pre-rut,
like the last podcast. You were saying early you focus on like food type sources, early season, and then you're kind of describing like more rut.
Yeah, those are
locations.
rut phase oriented.
Yeah,
and a lot of times when I'm scouting public lands, I will find a bedding area that looks decent, but I have better spots to hunt. When the rut phases start rolling around. So I will go into those bedding areas that I bypassed on. I decided I'm not going to hunt here during the rut phases, but it's still a decent spot, but I have better spots. I'll go in there during the lull, that mid-October time frame when mature bucks are primarily nocturnal outside their bedding areas. I will go in on a morning hunt way before daylight, be in my tree. I'll get in a tree at least an hour and a half before daylight, because I want to be in there before mature bucks transition into the bedding areas before daylight. And I will do sparring sequences. And that's one thing a lot of people don't understand, is they don't understand the importance of
Every hunter has blind spots and weaknesses holding them back. What are yours? The Deer IQ Test 360 is our complete hunting strategy and skills assessment, designed to uncover the holes in your approach, fix them fast, and refocus your efforts on exactly what gets results. It's quick, insightful, and delivers personalized suggestions based on your unique hunter profile. If you want to consistently tag better whitetail, the Deer IQ Test 360 is where to start. Take it now, linked below or at deeriq.com.
Okay, and here's your high IQ moment. In a day and age of an overwhelming amount of free information, what is holding many hunters back are the specific details needed to be successful exactly where they hunt. Personalized and specific application is needed, with help many times from a trusted individual if you really want to see results. Whether tackling a piece of public or private land you're trying to develop and attract and hold big bucks on, that's what you need. That is why we offer coaching and consulting services at Deer IQ, like smart land plans and our public land analyses, to help you get the exact information and tools you need to see results where you hunt. Getting an expert in your corner is a high IQ thing to do and something to really think about. And I want to introduce a new show partner you may have interest in, 2A Display. They specialize in gun and knife displays and storage solutions. They secure your weapon safely in just about anywhere, so it's ready when you need it. In your truck, on your wall, on the sides or top of your gun safe for maximizing that unused space, or just for displaying your knife or gun for others to admire. 2A Display is your gun and knife display and storage solution. And get 10% off when you use code IQ on your order. See all their many options in the link below, and also they have magnetic options that are really cool. All right, now back to the podcast on finding deer utopias on public land.
And that's one thing a lot of people don't understand, is they don't understand the importance of sparring, because as soon as bucks shed their velvet, they start sparring for dominance pecking order immediately. I'm talking, and they don't stop doing that until the rut phases. So they'll spar all through early season in October, late September, through the middle of October during the lull. At nighttime, they're doing that primarily, unless it's interiors or bedding areas, which I don't hunt at that time. So if I've got a bedding area and I'm not going to hunt it during the rut phases, why not go in there? I don't care if I screw it up. I'll go in there on a morning hunt and do a couple rattle sequences. And if something happens, something happens. And 2 years out of the last 10, I've rattled in book bucks on public land spots that I wasn't going to hunt during the rut phases. I shot them during the mid-October lull. Yeah. In a sparring sequence, because they're sparring all the time, you may see a 10-point sparring with a 4-point. You may see a 3.5 or 4.5.
They're not fighting.
Or sparring. Did I say fighting?
No, you didn't. But I'm just clarifying for everybody. Like, they aren't fighting. They're
No.
They're just tickling their antlers.
Yeah, they'll just posture up and they'll put their antlers together and push. And usually if you got a big 8 or a 10 and he's on a 6-point, it doesn't last very long. But they just push each other for dominance for their pecking order in the local herd. And and they're not trying to hurt each other or anything like that. And it's so weird to watch. I did that last year. I saw 10-point sparring with a 4-point. And they're not doing a fighting sequence like you see on TV that's super aggressive.
You're not smashing antlers together.
Yeah, and the TV stuff is so fictitious to me because, they're hunting where there's lots and lots of mature bucks because they let them grow to maturity before they target them. So they can do super aggressive rattling sequences and get responses. You can't even do those during the rut phases here because you spook deer, even during the rut. But a sparring sequence goes something like this. That's when they put their antlers together and, tickle them until they kind of mesh up. And then it's going to be silent. And then maybe 15 or 20 seconds later, 10 or 20 seconds later. And that's all you hear is tine tickling. Yeah. But typically in the mornings or late evenings when I do my sparring sequences, it's quiet. You can hear that. You can hear that from several hundred yards.
Oh, yeah.
And
they're just curious. They're going to come.
They're coming totally out of curiosity, 100%.
And you said morning, so if you're in there well before them, they feel it's a safe area. There's no reason for them to think it's anything other than a deer.
Yeah, you can't do it in the evenings because you're making an intrusion with your entry, and which is probably going to spook deer, and they're going to push back, and anything that's back there is not going to come to you. So it's strictly for mornings.
John, you've done a lot of out-of-state hunting successfully, and so let's talk about that a little bit. That's becoming, it's always been somewhat popular, but it's real popular now, it seems. People want to try hunting different states and different things. Yeah. I do that as much as I can, and it's a different challenge, right, than hunting locally.
Yeah, it's an much easier challenge to me.
Okay, well,
because it's other than the short-term part of it, that's obviously makes it
so how do you treat that differently? How do you get on deer in a short time frame, right? Because everybody's limited by time. I got 3 or 4 days, or even if you have a week, that's not that long once you put in scouting and travel and all that stuff. So what's that process look like for you?
Yeah, when you say it's not that long, it's kind of interesting because when I'm hunting here at home, I may have on average 19 sits where I don't shoot at anything to one sit where I do. 95% of the time I'm sitting there just watching deer and squirrels and stuff and nothing I want to shoot. But when you go out of state, I always go to Midwestern states. The states I've been to have been Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri. And what I try to do is something that most hunters don't do. Most hunters want to go to places where there's a lot of timber because a lot of the stuff they see on TV and in YouTube videos, there's a big timber stuff. And anytime you're in big timber, your odds on a short-term hunt are very low because deer in big timber, you got oaks all over the place. You got natural foods, preferred food stuff all over, whether it be browse or whatever. And deer tend to browse and they can go anywhere. So they don't have any defined destination locations. they can move wherever they want throughout the timber. And out there, it's different because the big bucks out there will move through open timber, whereas they won't here. So when you go into a timber area, everything's open for the possibility of an opportunity because they're just not pressured like they are here. So I try to go to locations, and I do a lot of research. I used to buy those big red and white DeLorme maps of the state I want to hunt in, and I'd go through the pages and see which areas had more open areas. It may be prairie, maybe crops, on private lands bordering public. But I wanted to find waterways because I always go during Michigan's gun season because I don't gun hunt. I always go during Michigan's gun season, which is November 15th. So all the foliage is going to be down and it's going to be during the rut phases. So I want places that are 70 to 80% open area. Like I said, prairie or ag, because all the ag is going to be down. Even if it's corn, it's going to be harvested by then. And so that confines the deer traffic dramatically. Like when I go to Kansas, I'd say that's probably 90-10. It's probably 90% open prairie or crops versus 10% timber. And most of the timber is along these old floodplains draws that just run through the landscape every half mile or a mile.
Scrubby.
Just scrub brush, plum brush, big cottonwood trees, weeds. But that's the only places, and there's creek beds through all these draws. Sometimes, some years, depending on what they had for rain, they have water running through the creeks. Other times they're dry. But when they have floods, that's where all the water comes down. And you may look across the landscape and see some tips of some trees a half a mile away, and you get out there, and they're 100-foot tall cottonwoods, and these draws may be 50 yards wide here and 150 yards wide here. They just meander through the countryside, and that's the only places where deer actually have to bed where there's any semblance of security cover, and that's definitely the only places they have to transition through during daylight hours because it's the only security cover. Because once they get outside those draws, they're up in wide open areas, which they don't even like being vulnerable in those either. So I look for areas that have more open area than timber, because that way once the crops are down, the deer are a lot more confined. And it's much easier to hunt confined traffic than it is traffic that just can be anywhere at any point in time. There's physical destination locations. Like when you're looking at these draws, wherever there's going to taper down the narrowest, that's going to be a pinch point. So if it's 50 yards and there's a tree in the middle of it, you can shoot to both edges. Yeah. And there's lots of draws that pinch down to, I've seen them pinch down as much as 30 yards in one spot and be 150 yards, 100 yards down the creek bed.
Yeah, so it's an odds thing, I guess, of sorts, and it's condensing the deer.
It's condensing traffic.
Travel big time.
Creek beds and rivers almost always have some semblance of security cover along them because there's moisture there.
Yep. Interesting. Anything else with that as far as when you get there? So you've done some research, right? You're looking at, now I'm guessing you look at online maps and stuff like that, right?
Look at aerial photos. We always take cell cameras, put a cell camera on our locations and kind of hunt according to the cell cameras.
I guess when you get there, so that's maybe beforehand you're doing that?
No. When we always plan for 10-day trips, which you and I discussed earlier. That way we've got 2 days to scout. We don't touch our bows other than practicing in the yard for 2 days. So we scout and prep our locations, and then we start hunting usually on day 3 in the evening. We'll probably sleep in on the morning and then hunt in the evening. So on a 10-day trip, that's going to give you 7 full days to hunt. If you go out there on a 6 or 7 day trip and you spend a day or two scouting first, you just always feel rushed. And on a 10-day trip, you just don't feel rushed and you're clearer minded. And a lot of guys go out there and they just want to be in a tree like as soon as they get there. Yeah. So they'll go out there and freelance in and hunt that first evening. And then you're always working backwards. You're always hunting stuff by what you see, during your hunts. I like going out, reading sign, taking my time, prepping some locations, and then odds are very high that if we get kills, they're going to be out of the locations we prep the first 2 days. Will we prep other locations based on what we see? Yes, we will on what we see on other activity. But typically our bucks are taken at locations we prepared the first 2 days where all we did was scout and prepare locations.
If you had, let's say, 3 or 4 days, would you do the same thing? Like,
if I had just 3 or 4 days total, like a weekend,
yeah, like a long weekend.
no, I'd probably, if my first hunt was going to be in the afternoon, I'd go in and freelance in to hunt, paying attention to what I see on the way.
Yeah.
Because where I may end up and hunt that evening, I may have passed another spot that may be better for a morning sit.
Yeah.
But I've never done that. I've never went for a weekend.
Gotcha.
So I'm speaking hypothetically here.
Yeah. Okay.
But you wouldn't have time on a 3-day hunt to blow off a day and scout.
You could.
You
but
could.
You'd there's I guess
You'd feel
trade-offs.
pressure.
There's trade-offs for sure. Yeah. If you could get good information from that scouting, though, it could make that one day much more beneficial than
big
a
time.
random walk-in.
Right.
I guess you got to weigh that stuff.
Yeah.
I've done both type things.
One thing that's really interesting when we went out there is, like in Michigan, you don't go in and scout, during season. You just don't do that because your intrusion is going to alter traffic. Mm-hmm. When I've went out of state, I've never, ever had a spot where I would go into a spot, prepare a location to the best of my ability, on public land, and then go in and have that initial intrusion affect deer traffic, for the rest of my short-term hunt. Michigan, it would. Out there, it just doesn't because the deer aren't as pressured. And so we even put cameras, even back before cell cameras. We would check our cameras every day. We would physically drive trucks up to the camera at our hunting location, pull the SD card, and check it and put it back in, and we would hunt according to what we had on our cards. Mm-hmm. And if we had a buck coming into this location the day before, we're checking the card at noon the next day. Very likely, if there was a buck coming through this location, we'd hunt there that evening. You'd never do that here, never. Your intrusion would definitely alter that traffic.
But you would.
Your odds would go down
it.
dramatically. Yeah, there's always a chance. Nothing's carved into stone in deer hunting. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, good thoughts, John. Any last things you want to share as far as out-of-state hunting or just public land in general? I guess I had this question, like maybe one principle to be consistent. Mm-hmm. What would that be?
I hate to say it because there's so many people that are anti. They don't believe you can fool a deer's nose, but the scent lock deal has added to my consistency dramatically. I think I mentioned to you, from 65 through 96 when I was 100% hunting the wind, I shot 10 bucks. From 1997, when I was using scent lock properly, until 2024, I shot 48 bucks. Mm-hmm. So do the math. And also, everything we've talked about, there's chapters in those books on hunting public land, hunting on the ground, travel hunting, hunting access. I've broken the season down into segments. You got the early season, the lull, pre-rut, peak rut, post-rut, late season. Got chapters on all of those. Hunting in inclement weather, saddle hunting, scent control chapter, recovering whitetails. There isn't a stone unturned in those books. There's 27 different chapters.
John, let's talk about this book here. And there's three volumes of it.
Ultimate Guide to DIY Bucks. They're on Amazon right now. The audiobook, which I narrated the audiobooks, they should be up on Amazon within 2 weeks at the most. So,
and by the time people hear this, it'll be
on. Yeah, by the time you hear this, the audiobooks will be on Amazon as well.
Very cool. Well, thanks, John. Good talking as always.
Yes.
And thanks again for letting me hang out at your place here.
Thanks, Adam. It was my pleasure.
Okay, and here are your high IQ takeaways and challenges. Start analyzing your public land areas by principles John mentioned, namely looking at how hard it is to actually get to your spots, the level of hunters you're competing with, and how competent they really are. Really start analyzing that. And if you're stuck in the trap of hunting big open timber or areas that don't concentrate deer, really analyze your spots. And next time we talk with a guy who just tagged a public land 200-inch monster. And we break down just what it took to find it in the first place, how he tracked it down, how he refound it after it disappeared, and keys for him to successfully put an arrow in it. It's a high IQ detailed lesson anyone can take great value from. You don't want to miss that, and I'll see you then.